All right, I think I finally got this figured out. Oh, come on. There we go. Let's see here. Okay. We'll adjust the mic out of the way. You should be able to hear me from there. Streamin and Paintin. Streamin and Paintin. Well, hello to my one viewer who's watching. Hope you're having a good evening. Let's get some yellow going. So what we're working on tonight are these heavyweight Pullman cars, which is technically my first commission. I gotta do some cleanup work on all the green. So we're just gonna hang out, listen to some jams on a Friday night. And anybody pops in the chat and starts talking to me, well, I'll talk back to you. You're not gonna see from there. I wonder. Well, I'll figure this out. Someday I'll have a better setup where I can have the camera right above. There you go. Yeah, I see little sloppy details that would bother me if I had requested someone to paint for me. I would have been like, well, couldn't you got a little bit of, you can do all that detail work, can't you clean it up a little bit? And I would go, well, that's a valid point. Why can't it get cleaned up a little bit? So these are some Pullman cars that were never on the actual Virginia and Truckee Railroad. These are what ifs. And that's the cool thing about model railroading, is you can make up anything you want, and it's your railroad, and ain't nobody can tell you otherwise. And then, of course, most people who aren't into the railroading hobby, if they didn't know better, they wouldn't know any better. At some point, I do plan to make a video. There's lots of videos I plan to make. What I want it to be is basically how do I explain it? How do I explain this? Did you know that Boba Fett from Star Wars has like, well, you could just say he's got 3 different costumes in the original trilogy. You see, he's got, we'll keep it simple. There's the pre-production, which is the basically Ralph McQuarrie concept art of Boba Fett, and they basically, it's his costume, but he's all white, no color. He's basically what they called a super trooper or super stormtrooper or something like that. And then following that, they had, so that's the prototype Fett, and then you had the pre-production Fett, which basically is your Boba Fett from Empire Strikes Back. However, his gauntlets are 2 different colors, an orange and a red. And then that costume was seen in a parade prior to the film's actual release. And then you have the actual Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, that costume. So we're up to 3 now. Oh, and the pre-production costume, the skull on his left shoulder bell had a completely different design than what you see in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. As of Return of the Jedi, his costume changed again. The colors of his plates were different. His backpack had a completely different color scheme. Even his helmet was quite a bit different. His gauntlets, instead of both being green, were now both red. And so there's various details in the differences of the Boba Fett costume. In fact, if you really want to get to the nitty gritty, if you want to look at it, you can see there are different details between the stormtroopers in all 3 original films, and even Darth Vader's costume changes just slightly over the course of all 3 films. Now, why am I explaining this? When I got towards the end of my Star Wars hobbying days and started getting into the model railroad hobby, I told myself, I'm not going to be a rivet counter. I'm not going to be one of those guys. Besides, I didn't even know what I wanted to model at the time. Eventually, because this is back in Kentucky, I said, you know what? Let's do Virginia and Truckee, because I'm homesick and it reminds me of home, and I really don't care. I really don't have an attachment to the Old West type of locomotives that they had in that area. You know, I didn't have much to the history. But then I also thought about, you know, when you ask me what the quintessential locomotive of the 19th century is, I'd say go watch a movie called The Great Locomotive Chase. Now, this movie, which is made by Walt Disney Productions, starring Fess Parker back in 1956, I believe it was, stars a locomotive from the Virginia and Truckee called the Inyo. This locomotive was built in 1873, but is portraying a locomotive in the 1860s during the Civil War. I grew up on this movie. I had it on a VHS tape, and I probably wore that tape into oblivion. Something you youngsters don't know about these days with your Spotifys and your Netflix. Well, I can now, to the point, I can pinpoint details that I never thought I would ever get to. when I first got into the model railroading hobby. And so anyway, I went through my collection of rail cars, and I realized I had a whole bunch of cars the Virginia and Truckee never had. Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm getting ahead of my story. I got 3 people watching. That's cool. Oh, hey, what do we got here? Are those coaches for Gideon? Don't put magnets too close to the... Oh, okay, cool. So let me move my... Let's see here. What we'll do is we'll put this window over. This needs to go away. Okay, we're gonna put this window here, so when I look up, I can see the chat, and then that over there, so I can just see, make sure the. Alrighty. So where was I? Alrighty. Yes, these are for Gideon. How do you know Gideon? That's a small world. What is going on, Quentin? Model Works. So I got back into model railroading, yada yada yada, and so I said, let's do something from home. And so I bought myself a little 440 Bachmann locomotive. Because coincidentally, the model that they made, they used references of the Inyo, which is the one from the film I was just talking about. They also used references from the Genoa, which is now at the Nevada State Railroad Museum on loan. And I took it apart and I looked at it and I said, I have never done this before, so let's just see what happens. And I repainted my first locomotive. And I was really, really proud with myself. Oh, blast it. Oh, well. Unfortunately, I didn't know which direction to put the wheels, and so I couldn't get it to run. And so over time and many visits to different clubs and stuff throughout my travels, I learned that you have a thing called a decoder, a DCC, and then I learned about the complexities of that whole system. And I realized model railroading was not the world that I thought it was when I was a little kid. And so I realized if I wanted to see what I wanted to see on, YouTube and in person, more importantly, then the only person that's going to make it is me, because there's no way I could afford to commission someone to get the vision from my head and turn it into reality. It just, nobody's got the passion for what I'm working on the way that I do, at least as far as I know. And so I have learned how to do water slide decals. I've learned how to solder. That was a skill that was completely outside of my wheelhouse. And this one's actually pretty good. I don't have to do too much cleanup. So, oh, never mind. Spoke too soon. My first Reno had no water slide decals. They were just straight up vinyl stickers that I didn't understand what I was dealing with at the time. But people said the wood load looked like it was really well painted, but I mean, other than that, it just wasn't much. And it didn't have the sharpness and the neatness that I wanted from it. It was not very well researched, is the only thing I could tell you. And one of the guys that followed me on Instagram was telling me about this thing called the Great Western Steam Up that was going to happen in Carson City at the Nevada State Railroad Museum 2022. Well, I'm in Kentucky, and finances just wasn't a thing, and in my at the time, not really something I could afford to do, to fly across the country or whatever. Turns out, towards the last minute, things worked out in my favor, and I was like, oh, I can afford to... You know what? I haven't been on a vacation in a long, long time. Let's treat yourself. And so I flew back home for a week. It was 4th of July weekend. And the weather was perfect. I hadn't been home in over a decade. And the sun was just perfect warmth. Wasn't too hot. I might have over romanticized it because I had been spending the last 15 years on the other side of the country where it's humid as all get out. And so just a week of no humidity is, oh hey, it's a lot nicer out here than I remember. Or rather, I remember how nice it was after being in Kentucky for so long. While I was back here in beautiful Nevada, I was at the Great Western Steam Up, and I got to see the Reno in person for the first time. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little teary-eyed when I walked up and got to see it up close, because it's my favorite locomotive. And so seeing it back home was just something special. And then the museum itself, a little bit of childhood nostalgia, because I know I'd been there multiple times when I was a little guy. And man, I don't know what it was, but you know, there was also some family things that I was here for. And yeah, after a week, I just knew it was time to come home. And so I came back to Nevada. I got back to Kentucky, packed everything up, grabbed the furball, and Chiana and Nebula, my cats. And did I get a hair? And next thing I know, I'm back here home in Nevada. The next thing I know, I'm down at the museum volunteering, and let me tell you, the amount of information I have learned in the past year of being at the museum, I never would have imagined being able to learn. Namely about the VMT. I just didn't realize that we had so much information, you know? And so that kind of catches me back up to a spot that I was talking about earlier, when I had all my rail cars laid out that I had collected over the year or so. And I realized 90% of the HO car models that I had, the V&T had nothing to do with. It was just complete bogus. I was like, oh, this gets so much more in-depth than I expected it to become. Because I realized I was at that point that I told myself I would not reach, where I could tell you the difference between the Boba Fett costumes. I can tell you the difference between Virginia and Truckee rail cars. So that leads me to, why do my rail cars look the way they do? Because if you are keen-eyed enough, you would know that none of my cars are 100% accurate to the actual prototype. What most modelers would call prototypical. I go with what I call proxy-typical. For a couple of reasons. One, if you've followed my Instagram and Facebook page, you know I've posted photos of what the color schemes for a bunch of the older VNT rail cars were, and oh boy, not good, let me tell you. First of all, the original colors were of a muted yellow or a pale yellow, more of a dark yellow maybe, and with like a brown trim. And most people, if you pointed those colors out to them, they wouldn't really catch on. But if you show them the canary yellow and obnoxious green, oh, that's Virginia and Truckee. For the most part. I know there's another railroad that's what is it? The K. What is it? Is it in Michigan? I think I don't know. Illinois, somewhere in the Midwest. There's another one, but anyway, if you know your, 19th century railroads, if you know the VNT, you know her colors, and yeah, so I decided to go with recognizability over prototypical appearances, because I just wanted to have that, oh, I know what that is moment. Now, when I get to the point where I have my own home layout, someday future maybe layout, I might be a little bit more direct with the colors being a little bit more prototypical. Depends on my railroad. I may or may not, because mine's going to be... Actually, my home layout won't be 100% accurate anyways, because I like operation sessions where I call it old man D&D, because you're basically taking the model trains and operating them along the layout as if there's actual freight stations and places that need to be delivered to. And you go to various locations along the layout and you deposit cars, you pick up cars, you work around other guys running their train along the layout as well. And when I told you my discovery that the model railroading world was a completely different animal than what I remember as a childhood, there's a whole story in that alone. But I would love to do a operations friendly layout where you go from Reno down to Carson, from Carson up to Virginia City, and you got to hit the mines and the mills and the various locations, stations and whatnot. And then I would have a branch that goes down to Minden. So the Minden branch did not exist until well after the big bonanza was over. But even though I'm doing the more 19th century, I'm going to make it a ambiguous 19th century VNT, where I've got the more modern colored cars. I've got the branch line down to Minden, because after the mines basically dried up in Virginia City, They moved to farming industries down in Minden to keep them afloat for another decade or so. And eventually that didn't last forever, and in the 1950 the V&T had to shut down permanently until it was later reopened, but more as a excursion railroad because it doesn't connect to any main lines or anything. So I'm using airbrush paint for my yellow, but to do the little cleanups I just squirt a little bit out and just kind of make that work as the best I can. Eventually I need to get new brushes. All my fine point brushes are all could be better, but for some reason the hobby store here's are garbage. I will say that I do miss that about Kentucky. I miss the gym that I had, and I miss my friends. That just goes without saying, so that's just kind of a not part of this list in case any of my Kentucky people see this and then go like, oh, why doesn't he miss us? That's not what this list is. I miss my gym because it was a really good gym with heated therapy pool and saltwater pool, and everything about it was just, it was worth every penny that I paid. But God put me on a different path. Actually, he's had me on the same path, I think. Digging these jams. This copyright free music. Relaxed movement, 12 hours. Twitch safe music for creators and streamers. Let's see here. Where's that other guy that I was working on? There you are. Problem with this yellow and this green is I got to do layer on top of layer on top of layer to cover up some of these green spots that nobody else but I will see. But I can't let my products go. I have a high attention to detail, and little things that would bother me, I would not want other people to deal with. That's why I ain't cheap. Better have your pocketbook ready if you come to me asking for a commission. I say as a complete novice compared to some of the people I see online. Holy cow. You think I've got an attention to detail? Oh, I'm going to have to do some more green on there. There are people that make me look like a 5-year-old with crayons and Crayola watercolor. Or no. Testers. The basic, basic color pattern testers paint and... yeah, ugh. Some of the models that I've done in the past, I would look back at and just go, "What were you? How did you fuck that up?" But that's how we get to where we are now. Things don't just happen overnight. You got to work at it. I got a buddy of mine. I keep telling him over and over and over. I didn't get to this, yesterday. I've been working at this for years now, and the best way to figure something out is you just grab pieces and tear it apart and try to put it back together and see what you get. And if you don't like it, take it back apart or take another one apart and do it again, and keep doing it until you reach the quality where people go, "Oh wow, I wish I could do that." You can do that. You just gotta take it apart and put it back together, and that's how I figured things out. Granted, everybody learns their own way, so it's more of that's just what I did. It's how I did it. It's not something I can really just here, that's how it's done. It's like, no. You gotta do the work and figure it out for yourself. Trial and error. Something saying about the only difference between a novice and a master is the master has failed more times than the novice has tried. And that works for all levels. Oh, that one's getting there. Because I am not a master yet. I am merely... I'll take journeyman. I'm definitely no novice apprentice, but I'll definitely take... I'm a journeyman at this point. I don't know, I think maybe that just comes with age. Thin layers over and over and over until the green goes away. And then I'll have to do some touch-up green. Annoyingly. Easily, but annoyingly. And then I will hit it with a clear coat, which... Look at the old forecast. Oh, that's quickly changing. We were going to have like 80-degree weather in a week or two, but now it's all down to 40-degree weather. That's unpleasant. Oh well. Oh well. I guess it's finally going to be wintertime. Stupid wintertime. Those are good. That's good. That's mostly good. That looks good. You are checked off. Let's check these guys. Got a couple of spots that I gotta keep doing over and over just till the yellow gets the primary over it, and then next thing you know, you don't see it once it all dries up. One thing I cannot guarantee, it's just, it is an impossibility, cannot guarantee, no matter how quality I advertise on my commissions, you might get in close one day and you might go, is that a hair stuck? Look, I have 2 cats and they like to shed. So I cannot guarantee you will not get a little bit of my cat's sharing of love. I can't guarantee that it will not have at least 1 or 2 tiny little hairs. That's just an impossible. If you can't take that risk, I am not the painter for you. At least not right now. Not until I get a place where I got a studio where I can, I don't know, walk through a, what do they call it? Hermetically sealed vault or something. Something to, microblast all the cat floof. But I don't have a stitch of clothing that is not cat floofed. I have so much cat fur. So I vacuum at least once a week. Just to, keep it down. Because if I didn't, I'll tell you what, I've been to some people's houses that don't consider vacuuming up their cat fur, and I don't know how people do that. Like, I love my cats, but I also understand that cat fur gets everywhere. And I'm accustomed to it. But I know most people aren't me. So I try to keep my place clean. Maybe the military put more in me than I thought they did. It's not spotless. I wouldn't pass no drill sergeant inspection, that's for damn sure, but ain't no drill sergeant coming through these doors. Ain't got no strings on me. Oh hey, I got 4 views. Concurrent viewers 0. Chat rate 0. Average viewer duration 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Well, that's encouraging. Those are good. Well, I think that's about gonna do it. Got some good painting in, got some good ramblings in. Alrighty. Well, I'll catch y'all on the next one. Maybe I'll try to make this a weekly thing. Who knows? I want to do more with this channel. I'm just not there yet. I'm just working at it. But alright. Well, I appreciate those of you who stopped by and those who watch this later. Catch you on the next one.